So let us discuss 27th August 2015 newspaper. The first issue is related to the crisis in the textile sector. What are the challenges which we are facing? If you see simultaneously the sugar industry in India, it also faces the similar challenges. So both of them, they need the raw material from the agricultural sector. The cost of the raw material is highly politicized in India, where the minimum support price which has been given to this raw material, it is making the cost of inputs very costly for the industry. And second thing is, Indian industry's competitiveness is decreasing, especially because of the high input and transaction costs. And also United States of America, it is imposing the duties on the Indian textiles, and other countries such as Vietnam and Cambodia are enjoying the zero duty over there. And second is, the technology upgradation fund scheme, it is about to be ended in 2017. It improves the so-called as the efficiency of the textile sector in India, so better it shall be continued. Now, a comprehensive national textile policy is the need of the hour, and it has to provide for a level playing field to the textile industry with regard to the tariff rates, material costs, cost of funding and transaction costs. Now, if you take the Make in India campaign, so the sector after railways which is highly employing the people in India, it is the textile sector. So if employability is the concern of Make in India, so the first sector which it has to concentrate is textile sector. And in China, for the subsidies issue, instead of providing for the minimum support price, they have resorted towards the direct subsidies. It means the prices will be determined at the market rates. So any losses to the farmers will be compensated by the government through direct subsidies, which India also shall move on to. And the next is one rank, one pension scheme. So almost it appears that a deal was reached between the government and the retired army personnel. Now what is this one rank, one pension scheme? It means a person, an officer, retired at the same rank, at the same length of the service, irrespective of the time of retirement, he shall get the same pension. What is the problem as of now is, the people who retired earlier, they get a relatively less pension when compared to the people much juniors to them who retired at a later date. So now, why the government is so slow in taking these decisions? One is the government has a target of the fiscal deficit to achieve to the 4%, further to 3.6. Now in this context, increasing this or one rank, one pension scheme will create another 8,000 plus crores of burden on the government, where government will maybe failing to reach these particular fiscal deficit targets. Now in this context, this article provides for a well alternative solution to this. Now re-employability of the people who are retiring from the army is, or else that climate has to be generated, developing their skills and developing their or using their entrepreneurial abilities and providing necessary assistance to them. This improves the post-retirement environment to these people, because army personnel, they retire at the very early ages or young ages to keep the army young. So it means they are employable and alternative employment need to be generated. Now with regard to Naga issue, though the Prime Minister has turned it to be historic, there is nothing to be called as historic with regard to this particular agreement is concerned. So what is the challenge with regard to this agreement is, the first one is, it is just a framework agreement and not a permanent settlement. Now the agreement will be successful only if Naga demand for sovereignty is been compromised and their demand for Nagalim or Greater Nagaland is compromised. On the other hand, the government is able to identify unity and identity of the Nagas as a whole. If that has to be identified, a territorial distribution, if it has been brought as a solution, it will raise the tensions in Assam, Manipur, etc. Already CMs of these states have expressed for this. So the Greater Nagalim, the all Naga inhabited regions, they are distributed across the various northeastern states in India. Already there was an agitation in Manipur when the ceasefire agreement was signed, and also the territorial locations are not been determined, boundaries are not been determined. So in this case, the territorial redistribution or reorganization cannot be a solution. So in this context, there is a fine balance that has to be achieved. Now in this, Mr. Muvaya, who is a person representing the NSCN, he talked about shared sovereignty. It means within the framework of the Indian Constitution, the Nagas will try to establish and nurture their culture and identity. So it is relatively good in a country that has got much of the diversity. And protecting of the identities in a diversified nation through this shared sovereignty concept, what it was brought in, appears to be good. And also the author talks about we have to bring in a model which is called a supra-state model, where Nagas can culturally link, though they are being inhabited in different territorial regions. In this context, the Nagas are not represented by one single faction. Among the Naga insurgents, Naga ISCN Muvaya, NSCN Muvaya, Isaac Muvaya, NSCN Kaplong faction, which is divided into NSCN reorganization. There are multiple number of factions into that. So in this context, Muvaya and Kaplong faction, they never see eye to eye. So the Kaplong faction, it feels that it is neglected with regard to the talks as the agreement was signed between Isaac and Muvaya. So they broke the ceasefire agreement and Manipur ambush has happened. And also, Kaplong faction, it has developed something called United Northeast Liberation Front of West Southeast Asia with Wolfa and all these Methi rebels, etc. So which has conducted an ambush against the army personnel. Now in this context, how to bring NSC and Kaplong also into this bound agreement is another major thing. Though Indian government has tried on its part through the engagement of the civil society, but it did not give the proper results over there. And also, India has provided, or India has pursued a hard pursuit into Myanmar boundary, where the rebel hideouts are being attacked by the Indian army. So the chest thumping that has followed has really irritated the Myanmar over there, which is not very much in cooperative mood to Indian government on NSC and Kaplong faction. So in this context, what we have to see is any agreement that is reached between India and Nagas, the most difficult task which we see in the future is the implementation related to the agreement. We have to see how it takes forward. And religion data. So always I said in my classes that the increase or decrease in population of a particular religious sector, it is more related to poverty rather than religion belief. Among the poor people across all the religions, the fertility rates are high. Now the problem is the government so casually released the raw data related to religion without any explanatory addendum. It shows the irresponsible nature. So generally when such a sensitive data is released, either in US, the racial data, or anywhere in the world, the government tries to explain logically what are the conclusions derived out of it. It appears that no institution in the government is owning this particular information. So in this context, the government shall have a policy how it shall handle this sensitive data that can be inherently divisive in nature. The next one is the Iranian port, the Chabahar port. The Chabahar port is important for few reasons. One is connectivity to Afghanistan, and the second thing is India is also a partner of international north-south corridor. So the Chabahar port becomes a connectivity to this. Now India is also developing a railway line that connects with the Iran's main railway line as part of this international north-south corridor. So it is a counterforce to China, because in Pakistan, China is developing the Gwadar port. So India, the Chabahar port, it also provides India access to the Central Asia. From this perspective, this agreement becomes more and more important for India. And with regard to black money, the tax havens are always dangerous. So that's why India is signing a series of tax information exchange agreements, various tax havens across the world. This time it is with Seychelles. Seychelles is an island nation, and India is developing a naval cooperation with the Seychelles, a maritime cooperation with the Seychelles. So that's what is the Seychelles president, Mr. James Alex Michael, when he visited India. These are the agreements that were reached. This is about the 27th August 2015 newspaper. Thank you very much.